It is great to see you today. My name's Dave. I am one of the pastors here, and it is good to gather together to worship God. I don't know, was that a ukulele today? Like, really taking it, when you have a ukulele, like you can even worship God. Is it a lyre? That's a biblical word. It's a mandolin. Oh, see, that's how unmusical I am, Maddie. It's really bad. Anyway, isn't there such joy when you accomplish a task with others? Especially one that was too big for any one person to pull off alone. At the high school I attended, there was a long tradition of what we called senior pranks. But my senior year, pranks were under threat. You see, the year before, a group of seniors, had taken things a bit too far. A prank that involved chickens up in the drop ceiling of the whole school, something like that. I won't get into it. But the school administration, because of that, had determined that senior pranks were no longer going to be a thing. In fact, they went as far as hiring a nighttime security guard for the entire spring term to deter any senior who might even maybe possibly think of trying to pull off a prank. Now, while most students heeded the warning of this tyrannical threat to tradition, one group of friends simply saw this as a challenge to overcome. And rumor has it, even though no one really knows, and it's never been proven, this group of clever and crafty students may have rigged one of the outside doors of the school, may have, over a series of days and weeks, scouted and timed the security guard's routine, may have used SEAL team-like stealthness to infiltrate the building one late night in May when they, working together as a seamless unit, pulled off what some have called the greatest senior prank in Papillion La Vista High School history. Again, this is all just a rumor I can neither confirm nor deny. But I can say that the senior pond this group created in the middle of the school's sunken pit area, complete with floaties, coins, signs, a good 1,000 gallons of water, and a plastic lining to contain it all, was the talk of the town for weeks. As one shop teacher who had been at the school for 30 years said to me, an innocent senior that year, "I have no idea who did this, but in all my years teaching at this school, I've never seen such craftiness and creativity." And to this very day, no one knows for sure who engineered such a feat, but one thing is for sure: teamwork makes the dream work. And that, my friends, is the subject for our message today in Nehemiah chapter 3. That was a pretty good sermon intro, I want to say. If you have a Bible, open it with me this morning. If you're using a Bible from the pew rack, if you forgot yours, grab one. In those Bibles, it's on page 384. And as you turn, let me quickly say, if you are here today and you are a school administrator or custodian, on behalf of those students, I am very sorry. I will also remind you of this. Nehemiah has returned to his homeland, to the city of Jerusalem, where the walls and gates lay in waste, and his task, his calling, his mission is to lead an effort of rebuilding. And I'll tell you why I'm falling in love with this book. Because we too live in times of upheaval and tension. Just like then, we now live in a time when things often feel broken down and people are living in discouragement and fear. And this story is all about God's people rallied and working together, not just to build walls, but to bring security and justice and peace and pride back to their city again. As one author I read this week said, this is not just a story of broken down walls. It's the story of a broken down city, a broken down culture, a broken down people. And today's chapter, friends, is the heart of the story. It's the chapter where work actually gets done, where vision starts to become reality, where praying and planning and promoting give way to doing. And I'll tell you what, This is not the most exciting chapter. In fact, rarely do you get an entire sermon on this chapter because it's really just a bunch of names. This chapter is Nehemiah going around section by section of the wall and listing out who worked on each section. In this chapter, there are 75 hard-to-pronounce groups, community leaders, and names of people who worked on this wall. But in the middle of this long list, friends, are some nuggets of wisdom that I believe can help us be more the community God longs for us to be in this world. So I won't read the whole thing. I'll read just the beginning, just the first 14 verses to help us get a feel for it, and then we'll talk about a few ways that we as a church can move from rubble to restoration. That's the title today, From Rubble to Restoration. Nehemiah chapter 3, starting in verse 1. We'll see how this goes. Pray for me. Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of Imri, built next to them. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassenaah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Miramoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the Barracuda, the son of... That was a bad joke. Meshezabel made repairs. I'm just trying to catch my breath here. And next to him, Zadok, son of Bana, also made repairs. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. The Jeshanah gate was repaired by Joiada, son of Paseah, and Meshullam, son of Besodeiah. They laid its beams and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. Next to them, repairs were made by men from Gibeon and Mizpah. Malataniah of Gibeon and Jadon of Maranoth, places under the authority of the governor of Trans-Euphrates. Uzziel, son of Harhaiah, one of the goldsmiths, repaired the next section. And Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. They restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Rephaiah, son of Hur, ruler of a half-district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section. Adjoining this, Jedaiah, son of Haramoth, made repairs opposite his house. And Hatush, son of Hashabneiah, made repairs next to him. Malchijah, son of Harim, and Hashab, son of Pahath Moab, repaired another section at the Tower of the Ovens. Shalem, son of Halohesh, ruler of a half-district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section with the help of his daughters. The valley gate was repaired by Hanan and the residents of Zanoah. They rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. They also repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dung gate. One more verse to go. The dung gate was repaired by Malchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakarim. He rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. In all of that, I got 3 things for you today. Just 3 points. Last week was 6, so things are looking up, right? 3 points today. Here's the first. 1, as we move from rubble to restoration, we must look to leaders who model humble service. Right out of the gate in this chapter, Nehemiah brings up and points to who? Eliashib, the high priest. Eliashib is the first name on the list, and he's not just any priest, he's the high priest. He's the guy who every year goes into the Holy of Holies to meet with God on behalf of all the people. This is the Pope of Israel. This is the man, the dude, the highest held position in the nation, and Nehemiah starts with him. And it's not just Eliashib. Over and over and over again in this chapter, 6 different times, rulers are explicitly listed. People of high position in this community who are not above the work of simply stacking bricks. Friends, this is why I love seeing Dwayne Fagerberg working with our 4th and 5th graders. And Cindy Cartmill downstairs loving on our toddlers. 2 people from our church leadership who serve in this church at the highest level. But just 2 Sundays ago, I saw Cindy sitting on the ground loving toddlers in a room downstairs in our basement on a Sunday morning. Friends, here is the point again. When leaders say, I can stack chairs, I can wipe a counter, I can grab a vacuum, I can care for people behind the scenes, it does something to build and rebuild a community that needs to be rebuilt. You may have also noticed that in verse 5, Nehemiah says this, the next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. Why does Nehemiah include this? It's like the one negative statement of the whole chapter. Why does he say it? Is this his way of being a tattletale? Is he just trying to shame these people for not helping out? No, I believe he's reminding us of something important. Not everyone will join in. There will, in every community, always be some people above the hard work of ministry who choose instead comfort and privilege. But don't let them discourage you, he's saying. Don't let a few people disenfranchise you from the call of God in your life. You'll notice that it also says this in verse 14. The dung gate was repaired by Malchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Beth Hakarim. He rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. Why does this matter? Why is this little tidbit significant? This matters, friends, because the dung gate was appropriately named. I didn't talk about this last week, but the middle schooler in me could not resist 2 weeks in a row. Friends, just like today, people and animals in the ancient world produced dung. And if you didn't want your city to smell like dung, you had to remove the dung. And so they would ship the dung out of the dung gate, which was at the southern end of the city where the wind was often blowing away, so they didn't have to smell the dung. In our world, we might call the dung gate the poop gate. Come on, guys. Where's your mind? Get your brains out of the gutter today. This is church. Okay, here's the point. The point is Malchijah is not too good for the dung gate. It's not beneath him. He doesn't leverage his position or his status. Again, he's a ruler to get a post or a job with a bit more prestige. I mean, can't you give me a different gate, Nehemiah? I don't really want to do the dung gate. I don't want my name associated with that for all of time and history in the Bible. Let me ask you today, church. Are you the kind of leader who models humble service? Are you the kind of person, are you the kind of leader who in places where you have influence or authority stoops low and, like Jesus, sometimes washes feet? Are you that kind of person in the world? Are you that kind of leader in the places of influence in your life? Here's the second thing I want us to see today. Verse 2, the men of Jericho built the adjoining section. Some of you know this. Some of you maybe don't. Jericho is not a region of Jerusalem. Jericho is an entirely separate city, miles and miles away. But the people from there saw the problem here. And when we look at the whole chapter, we also see that people from Tekoa came, people from Gibeon came, people from Mizpah showed up, besides Nehemiah, who came all the way from Persia. Why? Why are they in Jerusalem? It wasn't their wall, it wasn't their city, it wasn't their problem. But here's our second point. We must see problems beyond ourselves. We must see We will only move from rubble to restoration when people start to not just think about what's good for me, what benefits me, but what are the struggles of others? What are the struggles of us? There's not enough us thinking in our world today, in our country today. This was actually the call of Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement of the 1960s. He wrote to white Christian pastors, begging them, please see us. He said, this is not just a problem. We are not just in a problem situation for black Christians or black people, but for all people, King was saying. He said, this is a famous line, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham, King said. And his point was simple but so profound. We must care about injustice even when it does not affect us directly. Friends, some of us think that because we don't live in or near a problem, it's not our problem. That because we are insulated somehow from the brokenness of it or don't personally feel the urgency, that we are off the hook. It's not my kid. It's not my city. It's not my community. It's not my gender or ethnicity or socioeconomic group. But here's what Nehemiah 3 shows us. The people of Jericho did not consider themselves exempt from the work in Jerusalem because they were living in Jericho. By the way, this is, I would say, such a definitively Jesus way to think and live. Jesus came into a very, very, very divided and segmented society and instantly and often scandalously started meeting the needs of people not like him or in his group at all. He was a male Jewish rabbi who offered his care and concern to women, Gentiles, Samaritans, and even Roman soldiers. You see, to be like Jesus is to be someone who sees the problems beyond yourself. And here we are at point 3. Uzziel, son of Harhaiah, one of the goldsmiths, repaired the next section, and Hananiah, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. By the way, why do you need perfume makers to make a wall? Why are they an essential part of the equation? Do you know? Why do you need them? You don't, and that's the point. You'll notice in this entire chapter, if you read it from start to finish, which is, I was going to say fun, but actually it's not fun at all. It's challenging. But if you read it from the beginning to the end, there is not a single mason or carpenter listed. This was not the work of hired professionals. It was the work of everyone, all the people on the job together, and here's why. It took everyone to pull it off. To accomplish this task, this vision, this goal, Nehemiah's dream, it was an all-hands-on-deck experience. Because this wall they were building, by the way, just to give you some sort of numbers and context, it was 40 feet high and 3 miles long. I know it just looks like Legos to us. We're like, it's a city for ants, which is a great movie quote that none of you caught, but that's really funny. It's a city for ants. It's 40 feet, 3 miles. This was an enormous task, and it was not glamorous work. This was not fun. It was not what people couldn't wait to get to on the weekends. But without this work, without Nehemiah chapter 3, none of the other stories of this chapter, of this book matter. If the wall doesn't actually get built, then Nehemiah getting the news of the city's disgrace and the prayer he prayed and the big ask of the king and the long journey from Susa to Jerusalem, you wouldn't hear about any of that if they didn't actually just build the wall. At the end of the day, This entire book, this entire story is about work. And so is our faith. Let me explain. You see, I grew up in a church tradition where we learned creeds and catechism and doctrine, and a lot of times it was boring. True story, when I was in middle school, we lived on an air base, and I went to confirmation class at the base chapel, and a friend of mine was supposed to go with me, but after one of the first sessions, he quit. So it ended up just being me and the air base chaplain alone. Me and this air base chaplain who was supposed to be teaching me confirmation, and no judgment on this guy, but he didn't really seem to love God a whole lot. He'd just give me stuff to read and then go off and take cigarette breaks. That was my confirmation experience. But in the middle of all of that, I did learn some things, and one of the things I learned was this short core phrase of biblical theology. Saved by grace, through faith, for good works. Saved by grace, through faith, for good works. It comes right out of Ephesians chapter 2, where Paul is talking to the church about what it means to be a follower of Christ. And there's actually a lot of stuff packed into that one little statement. The free, unearned grace that God offers to us in Jesus. The reception of that gift of grace through faith, through placing your trust in God, in Jesus as Lord. And then, for good works. For the end goal, for the purpose of being used by God to accomplish God's good plans in this world. And again, if you've lost it, here's the point I'm making. Here's the reason I told you all that stuff, because some of you can't stop thinking about my smoking confirmation pastor. Set him aside for a minute. God's goal for you in Christ is work. That you would work, that you'd get to work, that you would join in and be a part of kingdom work. It's not by grace through faith for good sermon listening. It's not by grace through faith so that you can enjoy your favorite worship tunes and have a killer playlist on Spotify. By the way, I do have a killer worship playlist on Spotify, and if you want me to share it with you, I will. I'm not against those. It's just not the end goal. The end goal is that you can be a part of the saving, redeeming, restoring, grace and hope and peace offering work of God in this world. That's what God's plan is for your life. That's why He's called you and saved you, and it's actually how He'll sanctify you. Don't feel like you're changing. Don't feel like you're growing. Don't feel like you're experiencing the transforming power we talk about up here. Let me tell you something. Get to work. Again, this is our final point today. We will move from rubble to restoration when we pursue callings and get to work. You see, it seems to me, as I read this chapter, that some of these people had a vision and a calling to rebuild certain sections of this wall. For them, it was deeply personal and meaningful. In verse 23, we didn't read that one, but if you skip down and see it, it says, Azariah, son of Messiah, made repairs beside his house. He's fixing the wall right next to his house. This wall means a lot to Azariah. Shalem, it says in verse 12, got his daughters involved. It was personal for Shalem. But here's what I'm guessing, and actually what I know. Some people were just stacking bricks, just doing a chore, just accomplishing a task that needed to be done. Church, today, I'm asking you to consider two things in response to this message. Here's the first. Where do you have a ministry? Where do you have a vision and a calling and a passion to make a difference for God in this world? This is something we talk about a lot around here. Where do you sense that God wants to use you, your gifts and talents and experiences and skills to accomplish something for Him in this world? That's question one, and it's a big question. But here's question two, and it's actually where I want to hone in this morning. Where are you willing to just stack some bricks as a part of this church? Because there's lots to do. It's a big wall. It's a big vision we have to be salt and light in this world and in this city. And here's the tension. Not every job has to be a calling. You see, we live in a world that I believe is increasingly saying, if it's not a deeply satisfying and rewarding thing for you, if it's not your calling or gifting or destiny in life, then don't waste your time with it. But here's the rub. The Bible says the church is like a family, and in a family, sometimes there are just chores. No one really loves chores. Anyone in here is like, I love chores. There's some weird people in here that probably would raise their hand if it was a safe space. Most people don't really love chores. Normal people don't like cleaning the bathroom or washing the windows or vacuuming the stairs. But when you are a member of the family, sometimes you pick up some chores. So again, here's my second challenge. Will you pick up a chore as part of this church family? Will you fill a role or grab a task or volunteer in a space? Not because it's your favorite thing in the world, but simply because we need security people. We need kids' men volunteers. We need hospitality folks and tech team workers and people to join with Pastor Ted to take care of our facility. Do you have a chore? And I say that knowing that many of you do. My hope for this message is actually that all of you chore workers and task takers around here, I hope this message encourages you and strengthens you and spurs you on to keep going, even when it gets hard or boring or monotonous or whatever. Because brick by brick by brick, you are building something that God will use for His glory and your good. That's the promise of the Scriptures. So thank you. Thank you, Remini Matthew, Michaela Fagerberg, Sam Saltzman, Basil Jones for caring for our toddlers. Thank you, Jessica Becker, Aruna Raj, Kristen Fagerberg for investing in our junior youth, for hanging out with rowdy 4th and 5th graders. It's not always a blast, although I love those kids. Thank you, Brian Scott, for making dinner for our young adults when they gather. Thank you, Nick Pounders and Logan Jacobson and Chuck Hayward, all in the tech booth this morning, making our audio visuals possible. Thank you, Bertrand Lee and Yori Balandero. Sorry, Yori, did my best. Working, a lot of names today, for working Sunday mornings on our visuals. Thank you, Chuck Hayward and David Penn and Doug Buchholz and Larry Hagan and Thomas Palau and Jesse May Stiegel and Jonathan Fernandez and Philip Carr for making our live stream possible so people who can't make it here can still experience our services. Thank you, Tom Rabe and Steve McCarty and Tammy Hirwigen, Larry Huber, Nathan Brown, all in our financial guidance team, keeping us on track financially here, helping us to use and leverage our money for kingdom work in this world. Thank you to our missionaries who serve around the world, Charlotte Duell, Paula Hammond, David and Denise Moore, Amy Knockner, Linus Morris, Sean and Chandra Galloway, Lou Hawley, Chewin and Beth Steinbrenner, the Palau family, all 87 of you who will be here at the second service, Greg and Kathy Stewart. Thank you, Pat Dyke and Cody Vincent and Mark Salunga, sound guys. Every good preacher mentions the sound guy. We're not stupid, we know. Thank you, Edith Smith, Stan and Jill McAllister, Becky Hamilton, Ann Schaaf, who partner with John Hamilton to visit our seniors who are sick or shut in so they can feel cared for and loved by this congregation, even though they can't make it here on a Sunday morning. Thank you, Nancy Schofield and Joanne Monroe and Michelle Espinoza, who run hospitality from our memorial services, who just care for people behind the scenes when they've lost a loved one and are in a time of deep grief. Thank you, Elizabeth Hildebrand and Amy Evans and Cindy Ray and Marianne Firstman and Mary Beth Daniels, who serve behind the scenes in our women's ministry. Thank you, safety team. I'm going to read them all. Derek Brenneman, Jason Caponette, Travis and Becca Harp, Ron Herdina, Mike Miles, David Penn, Marcus Ray, Daniel Robles, Tom Reidman, Lisa Sung, Jamie Williams, Patrick Wong. Thank you, front desk ladies. We got a whole bunch of ladies who just come and volunteer and sit at the front desk of our office and welcome and greet people and pass information and keep things running. Heather Johnson, Rhonda Hood, Luann Lee, Polly Thomas, Linda Miro, Joanne Monroe. Thank you. How about our kids ministry team and our youth team and our prayer team and Rick Johnson and all of you who go into the prisons to minister to prisoners? And Road to Hope and all the other great ministry that happens on our back property to salvage and change people's lives. And our Hands in Service team that goes out into our community and does projects for widows. and our Royal Family Kids Camp team, and our hospitality team that just makes coffee for you to drink every morning on Sundays. And you just kind of take it for granted, right? We all do. And I wanted to list every single name, but we would be here for 3 more hours. And here's the point again. Friends, we might be building different gates, but we are all part of the same wall. And it matters. It makes a difference. Let me tell you something. I hope you know this, but I am just like you. I hope you hear that from me. I am just like you. We have different jobs and roles and giftings, but you cut through all that stuff, and guess what? I am just a dad. I'm just a dad. I'm a dad who worries and prays and hopes and dreams for my kids, just like many of you do yours. And I say that because this week, my youngest daughter, who's now a sophomore in high school, crazy, was taken out to coffee and to a meal by her youth leader at youth group. An adult from our church spent a couple hours just showing interest and care and concern and love for my kid. Do you know how much that means? You know how hard it is to be a Christian teen in this world, in this city? How hard it is to just walk with Jesus when most of your friends don't even know who Jesus is? And so when an adult from our church comes alongside to help and support and encourage, it means the world. And I say that because your work, your tiny little task, your little chore around here works together with all the other bricks being stacked up such that teens are getting loved on, and seniors cared for, and women encouraged, and addicts healed, and the gospel shared, and hope restored to people who are living in a hopeless world. So church, don't lose heart. That's Nehemiah chapter 3. Don't lose heart. Don't lose focus for 1 minute. Because, and here's my final comment, your one little section is part of a wall of hope God is building through his people, one brick at a time. Amen? Amen.